So let's start working on our AQI API. Too many A's and Q's and I's. So the first step is going to be getting user location. So before we can even do that, though, we got to do a little bit of setup. So this first part one, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this. For this, we'll walk you through it. So I'm just going to show you, but I'll just walk through it because I've already done this part of the setup. So in this case, you're going to add a new section, right? And so for me, this add it, you want to add it right under the P, and I believe that is A. And to show you here, yeah, so right under the carbon footprint calculator under the P, that's where you would add it. And in that case, also, I have display none, but I went ahead and display block here, and I would suggest you do the same. That way, as we move forward, we will handle that UI stuff later. Okay. Then you'll create a new file, AQI integrator CSS. So in this case, this is a fairly common practice that we see, is when you're doing things kind of outside of the realm of the main app, we create different files for them. So in this case, you'll have then create that file and then just add a link under your style CSS for that. Okay, so that's all the styling associated with this. You can take a look at the section to see the heading, right, the info, the status, right, and then a refresh button. Okay, so these are all the stuff we'll come back to later on. Okay, so we've done all that, include all that. And then what you want to do here, and there is some responsiveness there as well. Now, actually, let's get into what we need to do to set this up. So you're going to end up creating 3 new files. Okay, and I've given you the name of them here, and just create them to start with, and we'll update several files as we move through. So after you create the files, and you can see I already have the files here, and we'll add some content later. But one of the things you want to do is on your index file is actually remove that color code, and I talk about this here, remove that color-code.js script link, and then add back or uncomment the app one. Okay, so do that. And now what we're going to do is actually the API key that I had you all hopefully go out and get for the attendance on Monday. We're going to actually show you one of the techniques. There's actually several techniques for this, but for the config JS file, what we'll do is we'll end up adding this. Actually, here, I saw something I had changed, so I refreshed it. Ooh, that didn't come out, but I'll show you anyway. This part of it. So we're going to keep it private. So this config file is going to be excluded, and we use the gitignore file to do that, so that once you create it locally, it will not be pushed to GitHub. So even though we're using private repos, we still want to keep that stuff off of GitHub, just because your API keys are private and you don't want them out in the wild. Okay, so let me just show you, because I already had to do this for my setup. So in here, what I did is in my gitignore. Now that gitignore is actually in the base. Okay, right under the private is in that root. We call it the root. And in this case, you can just add a comment and then add the config.js. So what this will do, and you can actually see, and I'll show you this, but when you do that, and then we'll have to commit it, and there's a specific way you have to commit it, what will happen is that will be grayed out. And what that is really telling you at this point is that that file is not being version controlled and not being pushed to GitHub. Okay. Okay, so let's actually, in this case, this is the error message, not the FYI you will get once you do this. So then in the root, okay, of, let me back up one here, right? So now that I'm here, and if I do pwd, and let me just make this a little bigger, okay, in order for the gitignore is a special file. That special file has to be actually git add, and then you actually have to specify the file name dot get INGNORE. Okay, so it begins with a dot, which is, by the way, an unusual file name, a file to begin with, and so you would add that. Okay, and then so that adds it. Now in this case, right? Let me make sure I did that. GITIGNORE. Let me look at that real quick. Yeah, I forgot a little error here, which is that I needed to be in my private repo. That would do it, okay? So then in here, so I actually just did a minor update so I could see it. So .git add .GITIGNORE, okay? So what I was saying is it was in the root, and actually I was backing up one folder ahead. Okay, so now that adds it, and then git commit -m, right? So in this case, you actually have to do, you don't have to do this message, but updating git ignore file. Okay, cool. So then you can just, and then this push it, right? So one thing you can do here is you can actually go out, first couple things just to make sure it worked is make sure that's grayed out, and then you can go out and look at your private repo to see that actually it has then been not shown out there. Now, when you do going forward then, when you do get, you may actually see this message, but just ignore it. It's not a big deal. It's just telling you, hey, if you want to, if you do other files in the future, you may want to understand that they're not being version controlled. Okay? All right, so now that we have the setup started, in that data service, so in our data service, this is going to handle all our asynchronous network operations, our promise, our fetch, our API key, but in this case, right, so we're actually going to import it into here. So you're going to have your API key that was sent to you, and then in this case your AQI API base URL. So these two will be in that config file. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up mine because I have them here. Right, so in this case, I'm not going to, even on the video, show mine, right? But in this case, you would go ahead and paste that in there, and after I finish recording, I'll paste mine in as well. Now, the good news is you actually could recreate this, so it's not a big, downside, but you just, rather being safe than sorry. Okay, so I am going to grab the URL, though, right? And I am going to go ahead and do that for now. And again, on your own, update that. Okay, so now I'm going to come back, right? So now that I have this, right, now I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to import it, right? So the imports are going to change a little bit, and you'll see how we've done in the past. We've imported everything. Oh, by the way, did I? Yeah, I exported them. Okay, so that's an important piece, is we're going to export. If we don't do the export, this part won't work, right? So I'm going to say AQI, and notice how, because I already have the files open. So I'm going to import the specific, and in this case just variable names, and then let's see, the AQI API. Okay. So now that I've imported these, and I believe here I do need to add the JS. Now, remember why it's looking like this is that we actually haven't used it yet, so that would make sense. Okay, so now we've at least done that, and now we can, again, modify on your own and input into here your API key that we'll need later as we start playing with this. Okay, so now what we're going to do is in our, let's see, our integrator file. Actually, let's do this. If you didn't already, let me close the CSS. It was actually in here, as I had some content already. I think I just talked about it, but if not, go ahead and make sure you add that content in there. And then in the integrator file, you also will have some here as well. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and I just added a console log real quick because I was kind of thinking through things, but let's do this. We're going to export out of here because one of its main responsibilities, there's going to be two really big functions here, not big but important, is going to be a function that's called get user location. Okay, going to be equal to an arrow function. Now we'll end up changing this to asynchronous later. So for now, we'll just say console log inside get user location. Okay, so this is part of what we're just, setting up to have. So now over here, then what we'll do is we'll do another import. So we're going to import into our integrator file just that get user location, right, from there. So it's a way we're actually scaffolding the code to be manageable and maintainable so that, our integrator file is going to be, and that's actually our next step, but this really is just show you and then we'll come back around and talk about it. Okay, so inside of your integrator file, right, you're going to export your main, which will be load and display, okay, AQI, air quality index, okay. Oh, well, I have to do const, okay, equal. Okay, so in here, again, just for now, right, just so we see if we got everything connected. Good. Okay. So now that we have this, so we'll end up calling right inside of here. Okay, so we'll call get user location inside of here. But there'll be a lot more code associated with that. But now we're actually going to modify our app.js to import. Okay, so again, we'll probably refactor these imports because the nice thing about, we've done it by doing all of it and kind of just, waving our hand at it. But in this case, we'll do specifically what the file names are. And the benefit of doing it this way is we don't have to do the dot. It just makes our code a little bit cleaner. Okay, so now in here, we're down in our init file. Okay, so by the way, where I'm following through here is I set up our get location, I imported it into the integrator, right? I gave that's that content, and now we've set up and exported the load and display, and now we're going to set it up in the app.js. So we're just putting everything in its spot to make sure everything is imported and exported. Now in here, right, so now we can just, for now, after we render, we can just say load and display AQI display. Okay, so now of course nothing changes. We just want to see, right, if everything got set up. And so I can see a couple things is that it did here load that. So what I could do to test it is I would come down to my dev tools. I'd go down to the bottom right here, right? I would then refresh. I would then call this, right, which is actually here, right? So now I'm inside of the integrator file. The integrator file calls get location, right, which is getting the base URL and the API. Okay. Now in this case, I just outputted console log. Oh, maybe I didn't put it in there. I have to check that, make sure I did in a minute. So inside of here, right? Cool. And now we're back, and then we're back. Okay, so let me see if in my config file, yeah, I did. I wonder why. Let me just really quick here, see if I can troubleshoot why in here. Yeah. So now I'd go, okay. Oh yeah, it did output it. Oh right, because it would be when it, oh yeah, on the init. Okay, so actually it's the load sequence, I'm pretty sure here, that's causing that not to, and these are just setting up the file. Let's just let it run. Yeah, that's what happened. Is actually, no, it was just listed at the top. That's what happened. I just didn't see it. Oh, and that's a really good point, right? Because it's understanding the load sequence of when things load in the browsers, right? So in this case, in this, right? Because I put it up in the global. Whenever it did the import, then it ran. I was looking for it down here, but it wouldn't be down there because these are run from the DOM initiation, the initialization phase. Okay, good. All right, so if you got all that done, make sure everything's tested and working good, then commit with this message, and then we'll move on to playing with what we need to do for getting user location. No, we're not done, so no need to submit your URL yet.